Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Gia. I'm a 26-year-old lady and I have left my mom's basement. Welcome back to another yearly episode of Gia, you left the basement. Where the fuck are you? The answer is that I am at my grandparents' house in Florida. Not the grandmother whose house burnt down a year ago. The house is still there, actually. Yesterday was actually a year since she passed. So this has become a new tradition, I'd say. But no, I am at my mother's parents' house staying the night. I just love doing these cute little I left the basement videos where I talk about, at least the second year in a row, talking about my best books of 2023. Now, I have decided this year to do it a little bit different, in which I have decided to do it based on my 5-star reads for the year. Whereas before, I just talked about the books that like altered my brain chemistry and they were the best books for me, but they weren't quite 5 stars. Like, not all of them were considered 5 stars. We're going to start from the tippy top. We're going to start all the way back at the beginning of the year. So I might forget my thoughts, but I wanted to do a quick little run through of everything that I felt about this year because it is about 10 days away from the new year. I have not finished all the books I'm going to read this year. I have 2 more books to read before I reach my goal, and I will probably reach my goal, if not surpass it, by 1 or 2 books because I drove here to Florida. So on my drive back, I have a couple of audiobooks lined up. So in fact, I finished an audiobook on my way down, but I will not be discussing it because the author, I don't want to talk about her. I don't want to talk about the book. The book is going to be unrated on Goodreads because I don't want to do that. I'm starting this new thing where any authors that have views with a trademark after views with a capital V, I'm just not going to leave a rating. And I trust that everybody knows by now that I do not buy books. I don't. I just don't, because this is a very big reason why. And I have produced a video that I am in the intermediary stage with the editing process to tell you guys why I don't buy books, because it is a multi-layered problem. But one of the reasons why is because I don't want to accidentally give my support to anybody. So I just don't. So in the event that I know somebody is, I just don't want to talk about it anymore. So I think that that's the proper way to do it, is just to not give it any attention. The single caveat to that is if what I have to say is critical, or if anything I have to say is critical, I will include that, because as a book reviewer, it is important for me to talk about books that other people might read, because I can't control everything that everybody reads. But what is important is that there's other voices that are saying, hey, like, this is a problem I found in the book and you might not like this. If that's not my job to tell you you can't read something. It is my prerogative not to support somebody. In the event there is something problematic, I'm not going to talk about it in a positive light, but I will be a hater. Like, don't get it twisted. If some of these books don't have any haters left, I have died. Anyway, we do have an upgrade this year, because I do have my actual webcam and my good microphone. The visuals are probably not great because I've got 2 lights, duct tape, and a prayer holding this together. Without any further ado, let's get started. These are all the 5-star reads I've had in 2023. They're going to look really weird next to each other because some of them are definitely literary masterpieces, and then others are just 5 stars for me. 5 stars for me. So I want to talk about them, and off the cuff, what I remember as my reasons for listing them 5 stars, because I think this is more chaotic. I think this is more authentic. This is you getting me in my purest form, which is late at night and my meds have worn off. So starting off from the top, my first 5-star read this year was Final Offer by Lauren Asher. From what I remember about this book, it was about childhood sweethearts that dated, broke up, and then ended up getting back together later on. What you probably know about me is that I have been screaming, crying, throwing up, and throwing my ass in a circle for the second chance romance trope, because if you don't like it, you're wrong. Argue with the wall. There's the door. Don't let it hit you in the ass on the way out. Second chance romance, to me, is peak. Because you have enemies to lovers. Anybody can write enemies to lovers. You have academic rivals. Academic rivals is a bit more difficult, but having a multi-layered romance that skips the whole getting to know you process and instead skips right to the remembering you process, remembering the things that somebody likes, and you have these layered conversations and emotions of forgiveness and guilt interlaced through all these things. You have less of a third act conflict and less of a third act breakup. Then you have more of a overarching theme of forgiving someone because you loved them once and you're loving them a second time. You know, to me, it just is a more emotional base. To me, that really gets my blood pumping is when a man says that he's sorry. And if that says something about me, I'll tell my therapist about it when I can afford to go back to her. In Final Offer, we had our hero and heroine who, like I said previously, dated when they were younger, have broken up, and now are going through the process of getting back together. There is a single parent element. I appreciated the inclusion of the child as an actual primary character that was like there and was just like a person involved in the narrative, and it wasn't just attached to the protagonist. Another thing I really remember loving about Final Offer is that there was a really deep theme of not just forgiveness and guilt, but there was a very graceful discussion about what it is like to not only be a person that's going through abuse and recovery, but also loving someone who has been through abuse and recovery, because Cal stumbled and fell on his way towards being a better person, but there is a very large theme of him wanting to be a better person for himself, not for the love of the woman in his life, not for the love of the child he's trying to earn. Cal is determined to be a better version of himself so that whoever loves him is loving that better version of him. The way that this is focused primarily as a individual's journey towards redemption of the self instead of redemption in someone else's eyes. I personally thought that it was very well done. Other people might disagree. It was the first story I had ever read with this being such a deep theme, so maybe if I read something else I might feel differently, but in my opinion this was very well done and it made me cry. And any romance that can make me cry can usually be 5 stars because I don't cry that much. I'm more of a visual crier. I cry during movies. I'm not really a book crier. Next is The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. For those of you who don't know me, I am a original Olivia Blake stan from her days on fanfiction.net. In fact, I have some very lengthy projects in production, in pre-production, which means I haven't started them yet. So please be patient with me. But I have some ideas cooking up in here in the back of this little mental filing cabinet about my love and obsession for Olivia Blake. But anyway, I love her. I love her so very much. What I learned this year about my love for Olivia Blake is that I learn her best when I'm listening to it, because sometimes I have to reread the same thing in order to make sure I got it right. The Atlas 6 is about 6 people who think they're the smartest person in the room, and they try to sit in a Socratic circle and talk each other under the table for 400 pages. All of her characters are distinctly different, and they all have their own personalities and their own quirks. It's just that sometimes when they have a similar narrative voice, it is hard to pick them apart, which is why during an audiobook experience, it was easier for me to absorb the story and digest it because every person of the 6 in the Atlas 6 had their own voice actor, which honestly, more people should do more often. Literally begging audiobooks to be read by multiple people voicing all the characters. I don't need a graphic audio. I don't need any sounds, especially with some of the romances. I don't need sounds, but I would like different voices because frankly, I'm a little tired of the same person doing multiple characters. I think I will probably talk about that at another time as a video topic about why audiobooks should have multiple narrators. I know that that costs more money, but there's a very specific book that I'm reading right now by a very specific author that won Best Romantasy in the Goodreads Choice Awards. Yes, I'm reading it, but I'm not going to talk about it outside of a critical perspective because I know whether or not I choose to read it or not, or review it or not, people are going to read it and review it because it's so popular. So if I can add a critical perspective to the conversation, I would rather do that than remain completely silent because maybe people should read better things. I'll probably talk about that at a later date. But what the Atlas Six does really well is that it does include all different narrators for all of its characters. And other books should do this more often. So it really helped me absorb the story a lot more. And honestly, what's there to say about me loving Miss Olivia Blake? I will say the Atlas Paradox did not hit as hard for me personally. That's fine. That was the Atlas 6 just kind of hit me at the right time. But the Atlas Paradox was like a 4.5, but it was still good. I have very little to say about the Atlas 6 other than I know that you either love it or you hate it. And when you try to talk about the things that you really like about it, it's kind of hard. It's a character driven story about 6 people who think that they're the smartest person in the room. And again, sit in a circle and try to talk each other under the table. And there's sometimes some gay moments. So if any of that is appealing to you, I highly suggest you pick up the audiobook. And I mean that. There are some authors that I love, but I cannot read them for the life of me. I had to learn that with Lee Bardugo this year because I couldn't do it. I tried to read Six of Crows twice this year and it just didn't happen. So I just bought the audiobook, and that's probably going to be one of the first things I read in the new year is Six of Crows. Anyway, The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. The follow-up to this book was a severe disappointment, but this book in particular was amazing, and it hit me at precisely the right time. So for anybody who somehow hasn't heard me talk about it by now, I went to graduate school. And I went to graduate school for archaeology. I specialized in bioarchaeology and historical archaeology. And the best way that I can describe what historical archaeology is that it is reinserting the pages of history that have been lost to time. If history is written by, they say, the victors, but really when you identify the victors are going to be white, rich, and literate, and men. Who are the other people that are missing in that story? You have the illiterate, the working class, the women, the children, the slaves. The perspective of slaves in historical archaeology is really big, especially right now in the United States when you see archaeological digs at Monticello, which is Thomas Jefferson's ancestral home, and you're finding the uncovering of old quarters in which Sally Hemings lived and other slaves living on the Jefferson plantation. That is a part of historical archaeology. The Lost Apothecary did something similar to that, whereas the reinserting of pages back into the history book. So you had this bouncing back of narration between 2 points in time with 2 women living in the past and 1 woman living in the future. And we're experiencing the sequence of events through the eyes of the 2 women in the past that the woman in the future is uncovering, because this has all been lost to time. This has all been lost under layers of dust and behind a false door in an old apothecary building. So you have Caroline, who's in the future, and she is uncovering all of this information. And Caroline was a history major. She turns this into her master's project where she not only uncovers, but she brings light to and justice to this story that has been lost to history. And it is about the story of an old apothecary who dispensed poisons to wives, sisters, daughters who needed to get rid of somebody quickly and with little suspicion. In a time where there was little justice for women if they had an abusive father or an abusive husband, this was a story that kind of took back the narrative in which the apothecary in the past was enabling women to murder the bad people in their lives. It's very fortuitous. I'm sure people did it with worse intentions, but the way that it is presented is that the woman in the past, I don't remember her name right now, she was a champion for women's rights, but most importantly, women's wrongs. And we love that. Next, we have the book that I will not shut the fuck up on book Twitter about, but Between Wrath and Mercy, I have screamed, cried, thrown up, and thrown my ass in a rhombododecaedron for this book. I will sacrifice my firstborn on an altar for this book. This is another example of a second chance romance trope being done correctly. Chef's kiss. So you have Emmeline and Rainier. I actually remember their names because I'm invested in the story. Emmeline had a twin sister who was chosen basically to be the once in 100 years something. I remember the story clearly. So her twin sister was chosen because she had powers. Her twin sister was killed by opposing forces. Her twin sister was engaged to be married to Prince Rainier, who Emmeline She was with her twin sister's man. Let's just put it that way. But her twin sister was fine with it. It's fine. She didn't love him anyway. So Emmeline and Rainier, after the twin sister dies, they don't talk anymore. We don't talk anymore because her sister's dead. So now, 16 years later, Emmeline has gotten married to somebody that she doesn't like very much. She has a daughter named Elora, and Elora is starting to exhibit similar powers as the twin sister did. So Emmeline goes to her lost love, the crown prince of her country, as you do, and says, "Hey, bestie, my daughter may be in danger now because she's exhibiting the same things my sister did, and I don't want them to get her." So we go on this adventure of having to then rescue the teenage daughter. So through that, Emmeline and Rainier fall back in love. There's a lot of forgiveness and grief that goes into their story because Emmeline feels guilt that she and Rainier were too invested in their love to save the sister. And Rainier feels guilt that Emmeline is hurting and that he could not love the sister he was engaged to, that he loved the other instead. They both feel a lot of guilt for not only the loss of the sister, whose death was neither of their faults, but they feel so much guilt to each other as well because they lost contact over all of that time, that their story to come back together told over a whopping 750 to 800 pages. It's a long one. It's a long one, you guys. And the other one, like the second one, is longer. It's over 800 pages. So they feel such distinct loyalty to each other for the things that they've done to each other, and yet they struggle to forgive themselves less than they have struggled to forgive the other person. And then they worry that the other person has not forgiven them. They're insecure in that Emmeline has forgiven Rainier, but Rainier cannot forgive himself, even though Emmeline doesn't blame Rainier either. It's a story of forgiveness, miscommunication, and love. They turn out to be magical twin flames. It just hit me at the right time. It hit me at a time when I was emotionally vulnerable from things going on in my own life, that I really needed a story in which the hero says that he's fucking sorry. I'm really in need of therapy. I still think about that book, and I still think about how it affected me, and I still remember that it made me cry and it made me feel something because, again, typically I'm not the type of person who cries when it comes to books. The sequel, Between Despair and Hope, I rated 4.5 stars, not 5, which I think was because it felt like two very distinct narratives, and together as an 800-page book, having two very distinct narratives that didn't feel like they had much to do with each other was very draining. I would have rather read one story and not both, but the third one's going to come out hopefully soon. But either way, an amazing series that I highly recommend. And again, I will not stop recommending to you on book Twitter. Next, I reread The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. There's very little to say. What I can say that is a compliment to The Cruel Prince is that I don't want to say it's the blueprint, like the with a capital T, for real enemies to lovers. I can't say it invented the concept because it definitely didn't. But as far as the last 8 years of publishing, The Cruel Prince set a trend and it set an expectation of what enemies to lovers looks like. The Cruel Prince was also the first series that I had ever read that had the inclusion of fae in anything. It was before I read ACOTAR or anything. It was the first time I read something that had to do with fae and not vampires or werewolves. So it really was a breath of fresh air in that respect. And then on top of that, you have a very vivid world in which Holly Black is really, really good at making you see every individual fairy as different from the other. She's very good at describing what they look like, how they have tails or they have ears or they look different. Are they covered in hair? Are they covered in fur? Are they covered in scales? What color are the scales? She's really good at fleshing out individual characters. And that's something that I can say confidently about Holly Black, that I can say confidently that other authors don't do when they try to write in the same area. So it's not that Holly Black wrote the first of something. She wrote the blueprint. She wrote the expectation. I love knife to the throat, enemies to lovers. I don't think that it is done enough. I don't think it is done well enough. And frankly, yes, it's 5 stars to me. To me. It is 5 stars to me. All right, let's keep this train moving. Violet Made of Thorns by Gina Chen. I loved this because the protagonist is a sassy little bitch. I want you to imagine a seer character who is not quite burdened with expectation, but is also not very whimsical, wistful, none of that. They've lost the sparkle in their eyes. They have lost it. They read palms every day. They read tea leaves every day. Violet was sassy. Violet was exasperated. Violet was bored. And I really liked that about her. It was more stressful to her, not that she was burdened with the ability to see the future, but that she had to lie about it to make it seem like, no, actually everything's fine. Like, no, everything is fine, Your Majesty, I promise. Like, that was more of her struggle, was that. And then she was in an enemies to lovers situation with the crown prince. So I really liked her. I thought that she was extremely engaging, and it was nice to have a character that wasn't like in the mist and in the fog and speaking in riddles and speaking like an oracle. I can't wait for the next installment because I loved that character. I thought she was so engaging. She was so interesting to me. And I think that if she was less interesting and she wasn't written as a seer that was bored, I think that I would have enjoyed the book a lot less, because that was part of her character, is that she woke up every day and had to do the same fucking thing and she didn't like doing it. And I think that that's what made the character for me. Next, we have the first book that I read by Anna Huang this year, King of Wrath. It is also the only book in the King of whatever, the sins. So far, I have not read King of Pride or King of Greed quite yet. Those are on my list. But I've read like 4 or 5 Anna Huang books this year, so I'm trying to fucking chill because I really like her books and I just kind of blaze through them. They're really easy for me to read and they're quite engaging, actually. What I liked about King of Wrath was not just the Asian American representation, but I enjoyed the fact that both of the people in the romance were both rich. Like, it was billionaires fucking. It wasn't he was a billionaire, she was a secretary. Can I make it any more obvious? And it was posited as this old money versus new money situation. That was the conflict between their families. And there was underlying tension between the two characters of the old money versus new money expectations and allegations, much like you would accuse a celebrity child of being a Nepo baby. I found that to be extremely refreshing because there was less of a power imbalance than there was a commentary on old money versus new money and the expectation. And also having immigrant parents and the expectations set by your immigrant parents and wanting to craft your own identity outside of your parents. I thought that this was very well done. I didn't feel as though that the heroine was getting lost in the narrative as just a sex toy, because sometimes that's how they feel, that you're experiencing the story from their perspective 95% of the time, but they feel as though things are happening to them, that they are in a relationship with a billionaire who's doing things to them, that they are being taken places and going through situations where the third act conflict is usually them being put into danger through no fault of their own, but for the fact that they have a connection to the hero. This is what I mean by things are happening to them and not they are an active participant in the plot. So what I liked about King of Wrath is that it was not just two billionaires fucking, and it was Asian American representation and the old money versus new money and immigrant family commentary, but also Vivian was an active participant in the plot as it happened. I know the bar is set so goddamn low. The bar is underground. If you are one of those incorrect bitches who does not like Babel, there's the door. Don't let it hit you in the ass on the way out because you are wrong. Argue with the wall. And the wall is made out of fucking brick. Babel is a literary masterpiece. Babel should be read by not high school students, college students. Once again, I'm going to be annoying about my educational background. However, I have a bachelor's degree in anthropology. And one of the things that you need to do in order to complete your anthropology degree is you need to take a theory class. This theory class involves sitting in a room with all your peers, and you get to talk about all of the racists from usually England, all of them who have committed atrocities to indigenous communities worldwide in the attempt to figure out culture, but not their culture, other people's culture, other languages, other gender norms, other societal norms, expectations, other religions that are not theirs. So things are lost in translation, things are lost in transcription. They were also extremely fucking racist. So when you have Babel, a story about multiple children who are poached from their homelands to be taken to England to have their native language and their native cultures exploited and extracted from them, all for the quest of knowledge and the expansion of the field of linguistics and culture, you get really fucking angry at those white British men who did the exact same thing in the 19th century in Papua New Guinea, and to the Trobrianders, and the amount of rage that you feel about these people who have robbed other people of their culture and defined it under their own umbrellas and have lost the perspective of the people who it matters the most to. Pisses you the fuck off now, doesn't it? Babel is an excellent example of what an anthropological theory class feels like in a narrative. And I mean that so seriously. Not to make the video serious for a minute, but this book should horrify you because, my God, you finish it and you go, my God, this is how the way the world has always been. This is the way the world was built. What matters is that you acknowledge that. What matters is that you know that. And what matters is that you go back and you fix it. You can say thank you to those people for doing what they did. But you can also say, now we do the real work, and you take it and you go back. And that's what a lot of anthropologists have done in the last couple of decades, is go back to those communities in Papua New Guinea and other places that I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm so sorry. But they go back to those communities that have been harmed by decades of this knowledge being soaked into the zeitgeist. And they go back and they talk to them and actually give us their words and actually give us their perspective. That's another part of historical archaeology. It's not just cultural anthropology and ethnographies being revisited, rewritten, and redone, but it's also reinserting the perspective of the people that it is about. You're reinserting their words back into the work that is written about them. And that's important. That's vital work, to not just giving them the agency and respect they deserve, but also preserving culture. Because as we know, there are so many languages and cultures that are being lost due to the expansion of mostly the English language, and the ubiquitousness of Western culture is completely eviscerating cultures globally. Like, I don't know how many it is, but there used to be dozens of Siberian languages that were all different from each other. Those communities have died out and there's nobody left to learn the language, much less speak it, because these languages have been passed through oral history. So there are very important works being done by linguistic anthropologists that go into these communities and they talk to people and they learn language through oral history in order to preserve their culture. That's important. That's important work to be done. I'm very passionate about this, as you can see. Anyway, Babel is incredibly important to me personally. It made me so mad. That shit pissed me the fuck off. But it also made me feel a lot of privilege that I had the ability to read something and not be learning it for the first time. To be able to read something and go, oh, this reminds me of my anthropological theory class, or to read it and go, well, now I'm thinking about theory again. These are concepts I hadn't thought about in years. They're concepts that I know. I'm grateful to know, and I'm privileged to know. Not everybody knows them. So I felt immense privilege to be able to read something that is supposed to exemplify what I learned in a classroom as a narrative. And I could say, my God, how horrifying. Anyway, read Babel. The last tale of the Flower Bride is ethereal. It is haunting. It's about a woman who is very enigmatic. We don't know that much about her because she doesn't want us to know. She marries a man. They have more of a love at first sight connection, and they get married under the guise that he will never ask about her past. She says, I will marry you. I will love you. I will be your wife. But don't ask me about what I've been through. Don't ask me about my experiences in life. He just says, okay, you're hot. I'll do it. There is a family member who is dying that they have to go visit. And it is during this visit that the husband, who is not named, the husband was not named in the story, which I thought was an interesting narrative choice because we're just told that it's from the perspective of the bridegroom or from the groom, from the husband. And it almost feels like we're him experiencing it for the first time. I thought that it added another layer that we were experiencing this story for the first time. And so was he. A mystery becomes afoot in that the great aunt who is dying starts to ask some questions like, what happened to your friend that disappeared a really long time ago? I just thought this was going to be a very lyrical, literary fiction. But what I got was something that could be akin to a horror movie. It's a combination of the two, and it's done quite well, actually. I think that it's done quite well. I think that this would be an excellent thriller. I think that it does count as a thriller, but it also counts as a literary fiction. I think The Last Tale of the Flower Bride was the best mystery I read all year. And that's saying something because I did read a couple for once. I'm going to talk about them both back to back because it just makes the most sense. But Belladonna and Foxglove were amazing reads this year. What I can really compliment about Adeline Grace is that she is excellent when it comes to her pacing. She's really, really good at pacing out a story and where you're being given answers to questions just enough that you're still left wondering what the fuck is going on, but they're not exactly holding everything out until the third act. I really liked the way the story is planned out and paced out. It honestly felt like a rare instance of a story where every chapter was necessary. I really liked the idea of solving a murder mystery by contacting ghosts. The London Seance Society should take notes. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good story, and I really think that it's unique. I think that it's an interesting take on not just characters who can contact the dead, but also the inclusion of canonical death, canonical fate, and canonical life as we find in Foxglove and that we will find in Wisteria. I think that if this is a debut by Adeline Grace, I think that we could see her around for quite some time. I think that this could be a favorite author for a lot of people over time. I think that this could become another big, great author. Personally, I really, really like the way that her stories are crafted. I don't think that they are, I don't want to say frivolous, but I don't think that they have staying power only as long as the trends allow it. I think that she's a very talented writer and a very talented story crafter. And we don't have a lot of those. So I look forward to seeing what else she writes in the future. Next, we have Lessons in Chemistry. I'm going to keep it short. STEMinist fiction. I've been really loving STEMinist fiction lately. Although the story is a really good example of like pie in the sky, white feminism, what if feminism existed in the 1950s and 60s, I understand how, unrealistic it seems. However, I still think that it is very well done. I think that the way the story is crafted is interesting. I like that the story is told over a set of a number of years and is not just set in like a 6-month period. I think that it really lends the idea that it is almost a autobiographical account of this woman's life. I also do know that it is a series now on Apple TV with Brie Larson as Elizabeth Zott, which is excellent fucking casting if I ever saw it. And I would be really interested in watching it if I ever get an Apple TV subscription. Next is Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. I will try to keep this short. This book changed my fucking brain chemistry. When I say that, a romance can become 5 stars for me when the hero apologizes, when the hero takes interest in your interests and cares about something that you like, even if he doesn't really like it, but he cares that you care and he invests time into learning about your interests and learning about the things that you enjoy because he likes to see your eyes light up when you talk about a topic, because he likes you. Bitch. I'm so glad I'm sitting because I would need to sit down if I was standing. I think the part of the book that really sold it to me and that will continue to haunt me forever, not to spoil any of it, but Elsie feels a lot of guilt and loyalty towards her parents for being there for her when she was diagnosed with diabetes and they took care of her. So she feels a lot of loyalty and oldest daughter syndrome to her parents. And when Jack stumbles along and tells her, you're not obligated to be there for your family and everything, and you're not obligated to do everything because you feel as though you owe it to them because they took care of you, they fed you, they clothed you because they're supposed to. They're your parents. You shouldn't feel guilt or like you owe them something because they did what they were supposed to do. And when Elsie had a bad day and Jack was supposed to take her out to dinner with their friends, and he said, "Nope, you've had a bad day. We're going to stay home at my house and we're going to watch Twilight. Not because I like Twilight, but because you like Twilight." Even though she is the type of person to lie to the other people in the room about what she likes because she wants to be the version of herself that everybody will like, depending on who's in the room. She wants to be liked, which is not a crime. Wanting to be liked is not a crime. I want to be liked. So what? He takes that expectation off her shoulders to be perfect and says, it's okay. You're allowed to like the things that you like. It's okay. And when he expresses interests in the things that she likes because he just wants to hear her talk about it, I'm fucking lightheaded. Like, I'm weak in the knees. Like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. Are you joking? Men like that don't exist, or at least I haven't found one yet. And then, of course, when Elsie looks at him and goes, "But Jack, the Twilight movies are on Netflix," and he had bought the whole box set, and he just goes, "Oh, I didn't know it was on Netflix. I just wanted to buy it so that I had it so that you could watch it at my house with me and talk to me about it." Are you joking? Completely altered my brain chemistry, which is funny because this is not the Ali Hazelwood book that is about chemistry. The last book that really did it for me this year was Twisted Hate by Anna Huang. I forgot that I had 2 5-star Anna Huang books on this list. Twisted Hate is a enemies with benefits romance. It's my first enemies with benefits romance, and the blueprint, if I ever could see one, it's this. It's the fucking blueprint to enemies with benefits, where you have the most fiery, independent, and dare I say unique protagonist in Jules. She is so amazing. I loved her. She's my favorite woman that we've been introduced to in Anna Huang's books. And then you have Josh. All her men are carbon copies. He's not my favorite, but none of them are really discernible from the others, really. But these two really fucking hate each other, and then suddenly they don't. It's very rare that you read any romance where the sex could be basically hate fucking. Like, my God, can my next boyfriend pretend to hate me for one night? I want to see something. I want to experiment. Like, it really ignited something in me personally. But anyway, yes, those are all of the books that I read this year that were 5-star reads. I don't really anticipate to have any other 5-star reads for the next 10 days. So I figured now is a good time as any to actually document this video and do it and hopefully get it up as soon as possible. If this video goes up before the November wrap up, just know I have recorded it. It's just on my other PC, which is not with me because I'm on Christmas vacation and I didn't bring it with me. So unfortunately, it's just on the main computer, which I don't have with me at the moment. So I didn't get my timing right to get it up in time. So if you see this one before you see the November wrap up, it is coming, even though my productivity in the last 6 weeks has been down the toilet. I'm doing my best to kind of bring things around. I am kind of hoping to be a bit more silly in the new year and actually accomplish some of the more silly projects that I would like to do. But of course, it all has to do with time. So I'm really doing my best to get around to producing these projects for you. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, but you also miss out on the algorithm if somebody else gets the idea before you. So I got to get the fuck moving is what I'm saying. Anyways, that is all for me. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you got to the end of this video, if you'd like to find me anywhere else, you can find me on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Remember to drink water and be nice to each other and exude kindness and empathy with everything that you do. And if you don't see me until January, I hope you have a great new year. Also, my birthday is in January and it is not too late to get me a present. Thank you. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.